Well, hello, everyone. This is Jeff. Welcome back to Youth Ministry Maverick. This is episode 60 for the next generation. This is my first video episode, and it is a joint project with my buddy Jeremy Carlton. Jeremy heads up Shepherd at Home. It's a nonprofit with the goal of sharing practical tools for building stronger families. It's primarily a YouTube channel, although he also has a Facebook page. Jeremy and I take turns asking each other questions about raising families and parents and kids at home, and also talking about how youth ministry fits in with that. We are releasing the same video interview on both of our channels and all of our outlets. I'm also releasing this as audio only on my normal podcast channels. And of course, this will also be on the Shepherd at Home YouTube channel and Facebook page. So I encourage you to go find that on YouTube and subscribe to that for Jeremy. I hope you enjoy this interview with Jeremy Carlton, as I am also his guest. And we talk about how to help make sure, whether it's parents or youth workers, how we can invest in the next generation. Enjoy the interview.
All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode with Shepherd at Home. And I am here with my guest, Jeff Harding. He is he heads up youthministrymaverick.com, does awesome podcast. Jeff, thanks for being my guest this morning.
Yeah, bro. And thanks for being my guest on Youth Ministry Maverick. This is my first video episode conversation. We are doing a joint episode. So we'll both be releasing this video and I'll be releasing the audio on my own channels and Jeremy on his YouTube channel. So thanks for being my guest as well.
Hey, Jeff, tell me a little bit about Youth Ministry Maverick and where people can find you.
Yeah. So Youth Ministry Maverick is a podcast. It's for unconventional, outside the box thinking and approaches toward traditional local church youth ministries for youth workers, youth pastors, parents. And you can find us at youthministrymaverick.com or wherever you stream podcasts. And as people will find out with this video, we also have a YouTube channel.
Cool.
Yeah. How about you, man? Where can we find Shepherding at Home?
So Shepherd at Home is a blog, which I don't have a ton of blog posts yet, but it's so you can see shepherdathome.org. And then you can also find us the big place where we are is on YouTube and also on Facebook, facebook.com/shepherdathome. And we're a YouTube channel that's committed to bringing practical tools towards building stronger families. So, yeah. So here we are.
Yeah, here we are, man.
Doing our first collab.
Heck yeah. Excited.
Cool. So I got a couple of questions for you and you got a couple of questions for me. We're going to go back and forth on this a little bit. And hopefully youth ministries can have some tools that they can put in their pocket. Hopefully families can have some tools that they put in their pocket and we can all be better off because of it. Sound cool?
Sounds good.
All right. So first question for you is, not all youth ministries are created equal, right? So what should parents look for in a youth ministry, or what should they look out for?
Yeah, good question. You're right. Youth ministries are not all created equal. And that I think is a good thing. And I just want to give a few examples to answer your question. The first thing I think they should look out for is authenticity. With this digital hyped up generation, there's a lot of good angles for lights and a stage and all these elements to really welcome students and pump them up. But you want to be able to find a youth ministry and youth workers who actually care and invest and deliver truth and deliver good subject matter to students, and not just make it about numbers, gathering people, having good pictures for social media. You want authentic leaders, and you can find that out pretty quickly by how They respond to you as parents by how they welcome your students, what they actually give them to think about and talk about. So that's point number one. Point number two, I think, is you want a youth ministry that isn't going to try and butt up against or equal your influence as a parent. And we're going to talk about that more in a little bit. But you should really have youth ministers and youth workers who want to help you as you parent your students and not try and take the place of you, or have youth workers who say, hey, if you don't feel like you can tell your parents, you can just tell me, right? You don't want that. You want people who are upfront and are for your family, are for you as the main authority in your students' lives. So those are a few good things.
Awesome. Sounds great.
Yeah. So, to bring up your point, when new students show up to a youth ministry, youth ministries, I feel like, work hard to make sure they welcome those new students, right? They usually have a welcome team of adults and students looking for them when they come in. But when it comes to welcoming or introducing themselves to their families, that's kind of an afterthought. And so how can youth workers and youth ministries really welcome those new students and their families, as well as just the students when they come in?
Well, that's a great question, Jeff. I do think that our welcoming, greeting, making people feel like we're friendly is one of the most underrated ministries of not only the youth ministry, but the church in general. So when we have our welcome teams and our greeters and the smiling faces, I think that is so incredibly important. But then like you said, to take it a step further, how can we make sure that the families feel welcomed, feel greeted, feel connected with? One of the things that I think is very practical, very, very helpful, but it's a little bit labor intensive is in today's digital world, it's so easy to blast off an email, to blast off a text, to send some sort of systematic response or welcome or something through Facebook or generate an email or something like that. But to handwrite something to the parent, to the student, as soon after they visit as possible, I think is incredible. It's a huge ministry. It says a ton about your value for people. So if you can handwrite something, if you can have the small group leader handwrite something, have a little card in the small group leader folder, so where that leader can say, thanks so much for joining us. We hope to see you next week. Bring this back for a free t-shirt or something like that, and put it, and you can tell when something is handwritten. I think that goes miles for telling how they care about people. And so the second thing is if you could actually make any kind of a phone call or a personal text or something like that to the parent. I tell our small group leaders all the time that it's really, really important to try to actually connect to the parent. They gave us their phone number, the kid's phone number. So you say, hey, you maybe text them or call them and say, hey, what's your parent's phone number? I'd just like to chat with them and get on a first name basis. Or if the parent drops them off, you can, and they fill out their phone number, you can call the parent and say, hey, Sally visited church on Wednesday night, and my name's Susan, and I am your kid's small group leader, and I just thought I'm going to be teaching them about the Bible, teaching them about spirituality. We should get on a first name basis, and just if you have any questions, give me a call. This is my cell phone number. Give me a text. If you have any comments, if you need help with anything, I want to be on the same team, and I want to support you as a parent. So I think that phone call to the parent, that connection to the parent just gets them to know a little bit of who you are and that you want to partner with them instead of just telling their kid how to live their life. We want to actually partner with parents. And so send them a card, give them a phone call. I think those things are hugely important. And a lot of times we don't do it, so just take the time and send a card, make a call, and it'll be awesome.
Yeah, it'll be a nice surprise, and that tangible, face-to-face, real interaction is something that when people receive it, I think oftentimes they realize how much they don't have that, and they appreciate that. And especially first time, new students, new environment, to have the adults reach out to not just your student, but to you as a parent, that should make them feel great. So,
and it really is a cooperation between the church and parents, which leads me to my next question for you. There's a lot of curriculum out there. There's a lot of publishing houses. One of the biggest ones, one of the most popular ones, is the Orange curriculum with Rethink. And they have this idea. The idea of orange comes from how red is represented by the unconditional love of a parent. Yellow is represented by it represents the golden lampstand of the church, as mentioned in Revelation. So you put red and you put yellow together, it makes a more exciting, more dynamic color, orange. The idea is that you have the parents and you have the church working together to have a greater impact for the student. So my question is, it's easy for youth ministries to say, all right, we're doing this, we're doing this, we're doing this. We're telling the parents, this is what we're doing, this is what we're doing, this is what we're doing. But how can parents connect with the youth ministry? How can they partner with the youth ministry in order to have a greater impact if we're really going to be working together?
Yeah, great question. Because I don't think that's the perspective often taken with this issue. It's usually, how can we reach out better to parents? But we need to, first of all, those of us in ministry need to make it really easy for parents to reach out to us. We need to come the majority of the way toward them. I love Orange and that just the idea of collaboration. I've been able to interview a few people from Orange on my podcast. And, one thing I love about that, as well as other youth content organizations, is it highlights the sound biblical principle that parents are the main disciple makers of their students.
Right.
I have a meeting with my new parents and students when they're coming into junior high in the ministry. And I lay out, hours wise, when your student is here at church in the worship service with our youth programming, camps, mission trips, hours wise, in 6 to 7 years, they're going to spend a maximum of 6 months here at church.
Wow.
So there's no way that we as the church with youth workers, people who are biblically and theologically trained, can fully train and disciple and raise your students. Go back to the 10 Commandments, Deuteronomy 6, all throughout Scripture, Old and New Testament, it's very clear that parents are the main ones. So when we as youth workers reach out and say, hey, here's our schedule, here's what we talked about today on Sunday morning, probably the greatest thing that parents can do to connect with the youth ministry is to respond and to not be afraid to push back. Because we in ministry, depending on the size of your ministry, whether you have 20 kids, whether you have 200 kids in your ministry, we're always trying to aim for the middle, right? When you have a freshman and a senior in the same room, you're trying to make sure that nothing is too over the head or way too low and basic for students. That's probably the approach that we take with parents as well. We're trying just to give them some good nuggets, some good things they can use in conversation. But we shouldn't be afraid as parents to be able to push back and say, hey, these questions are great, but we've talked about this as a family. And I know that John or Sarah, that they're really struggling with this specific issue, and I'm not really seeing that. Do you have any resources that can help us with that? Do you have any activities or any good questions I can ask my student when I take them to yoga, when I'm driving them to soccer practice, those kind of things? So being able to not just say, yep, I got your email, thanks, or dropping them off and talking for a minute or two to the youth worker, to be able to actually respond and not be afraid to ask questions. There are no dumb questions. You need to be able to be clear, because even if something is put in an email, as a parent, you have so many things going on. Don't be afraid to ask questions or to push back on what the youth ministers and youth workers give you, because it's our job to help you as a parent be able to have the resources that we can best give you to help raise your kids.
Right. Wow. That's a great answer. So thanks, brother.
Yeah, man. And I love that. And to kind of keep going on this issue, I feel like youth pastors see themselves as, when we supply things to parents or to family at home, it's often like Well, for parents, maybe it can feel like a dump truck or a fire hydrant. Like, here's all the stuff we're doing. And,
Right.
the parents thinking, I got 20 minutes with my kid at dinner time. And when I'm driving him here, this is way too much. How am I supposed to whittle this down? What am I supposed to do with it? And as I mentioned in my example, sometimes it might not be what they actually need for their students or family, but they're
Right.
afraid to reach out. So, Jeremy, as we're both parents, and we've dealt with parents and been teenagers ourselves, what are the types of resources or content that you think families need from us in youth ministry, but they don't often get, or it gets overlooked?
Yeah, that's a great question. But before I answer it, I would like to say, how crazy is it that we're both parents? You know,
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. Yeah.
you got one really cute little kid, little deacon.
Yeah. Yeah, man. I'm biased, but yeah, I think he's the best. And dude, I remember when you were my intern when I was a senior in high school, like just chilling, and we're thinking about, man, are we, like both of us, ever going to get married? And here you are with the awesome handful of kids, house full of kids who are spitting image of you and Heather. And dude, it's a lot of fun to watch y'all.
And back in the day when we used to climb Camelback Mountain, doing some crazy stuff.
Oh man, so many stories. We need to have another episode
Podcast.
just to like just to like share those things. Yeah, trying to escape the pickup helicopter. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Because I really want to know what the story is behind that license plate on the shelf there behind you.
Yeah, I have that. I usually have it there on my shelf, but I wanted to make sure it was in the camera shot.
Good old Tumnus.
Yeah. So when I interned for you, down in Fort Lauderdale, I had a long, big fro and just like a little chin fuzz right here. And one of the students randomly just kind of looked at me and said, "You kind of look like Tumnus." I'm like, okay. And that year for the camp video, if you remember, we shot a video, and I went to Joann's Fabrics and got some brown fur and stapled and glued it to some old pair of jeans. And so many things I regret about that video. And
Tumnus pants.
Oh man, I should have had a lot more on than what I did. So I was Tumnus for not just the video, but to lead the talent show. And I had no idea what I was doing. I made up that I had an invisible flute and I dropped it. And so where is it? Oh, there it is. And no one can see it. And I didn't know what I was doing. But yeah, I kind of rocked the Tumnus thing. And at the time, I actually had a license plate, another one, when I was in Florida that said "White Man Fro." And ironically, I didn't get the Arizona Tumnus plate until I was living here in Texas. But I still had my long hair at that time during my first year that I lived here. And then I got rid of it, and sad to say that it's gone for good. But yeah, those were some good times, man. Those are some good times.
So to answer your question, because I do have an answer for your question, I just had to throw that out there.
Oh yeah.
You said what about what kind of resources would be helpful for parents that are sometimes overlooked or whatever.
Yeah.
So one thing that I think is very helpful for all levels of parents is there are resources that are out there that help you understand where your kid is at the age they're at, because they're developing from kindergarten to senior in high school. There are different levels, and there are mile markers that happen from kindergarten to first grade, from first grade to second grade, from there to fifth grade. And when they go from fifth grade to sixth grade, a lot of stuff changes. And then from middle school to high school, tons of stuff change. And then from ninth grade to 10th grade, a lot of times 10th grade is when they get their driver's license. So there's huge bits of change. And then and so on. So there are some resources out there that help parents understand what their kid is going through while they're at that certain age, whether they're in first grade, third grade, fifth grade, or whether they're in middle school, or whether they're in high school, 10th grade. So I think that would be a resource that would be incredible to parents. Even if youth ministries maybe helped to put it out there in bite-sized chunks, to put it out there as posts, to put it out there as blogs, to put it out there as training resources to parents when you do maybe a youth weekend, maybe do a little parenting weekend and help parents understand what their kids are going through the whatever level they're at. So I think that'd be a good resource for parents. The second thing that will be good for parents, I think, is some sort of resource to help them know how to have or guide them through having difficult or big conversations. How do I share the gospel with my kid? How do I talk to my kid about purity? There's like Passport to Purity and going on a trip with your kid and what kind of those kinds of things. There's a curriculum called Raising a Modern Day Knight. It's working with dads and working with their kids and working with them through certain things that they might need to become a better man of God. So some of those resources of having difficult conversations, like how to discuss having a boyfriend or girlfriend, how to discuss sexuality, how to have that conversation, what to do when your kid messes up, how to kind of guide them through some of those conversations, how to move them from kind of controlling when they're younger. I can control these things with my kid, towards releasing that control as they get older and letting them make their own decisions and moving from controlling to guiding them. So some of those conversations, some of those big rock conversations, I think a lot of times parents, they don't know how to have the conversation. They say, I know I need to have that conversation, but I just don't really know how to do it. Or they try to have that conversation and it just goes horribly wrong. So maybe some sort of guides to help them have some of those big rock conversations, I think would be really important.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, totally agree. That, I love the bite-sized chunks because, you and I were kind of raised to where those big milestone conversations, sexuality, for example, is just kind of like here's a one-time talk and now you know everything. It really should be a gradual as they're growing with a lot of different issues because as they grow and, the brain, frontal cortex, really until you're like 25 doesn't really stop growing and developing. And so if you tell them something at 8, 12, 15, they'll need to know again in a different way because they've grown in how they think. And so it should be a dialogue. And that's what you want with your kids, right? You want a dialogue. You don't want to, I sit here and listen to this one thing. You want them to feel like they can come to you. So, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, okay. So on that note, I've got another kind of question. So some of these parents might want to be engaging their kids with these things, but then there might be some parents that are out there who are not really engaged, getting their kids engaged in church. And so you're the youth ministry maverick and you're all about youth ministry. We're both doing youth ministry, but the idea is the question is for a parent who might say, I really don't have a huge value for church or youth ministry, but I do want to build a stronger family. And my kid maybe either had a bad experience or maybe we just don't really want to go to church. But everybody says, you got to come to church. You got to come to church. What is it that will help me build a stronger family if I send my kid to the youth ministry? Or how can me sending my kid to the youth ministry help me build a stronger family?
Yeah, that is a great question. Great question. And the way I would approach that idea is maybe not in these words, but when you talk and engage with those parents, you'll highlight, your teenagers have these handful of great teachers at school or great coaches, these adults in their life who, they don't just try and teach them the content or how to kick a football. Like you can tell they actually want to invest in who they are. And while there are a lot of those great teachers because of just how much they have in their schedule, everything else they have to do outside of those times in their classroom or on the field, they might not have that much time to connect with them. Youth ministries, that's what we're built for. We are built for when they are with us, like at church, but then when they are at their game, when they are going through something hard, when they are hanging out with their friends, when they're having lunch at school, we can be there to help invest in them. And it doesn't matter if it's sociologists who aren't Christians or who are Christians, all of them agree that the more positive adult influences your student
Right.
has in their lives, the long-term effects are exponentially positive in ways that it doesn't matter if you have like none, but they have all this structure and all these good rules and whatever else. You want all of these adults in their life who are investing in them, who care about them, not just because it's in their job description or they're fulfilling something, but because they really want you to do it. And of course, the one more positive note for that is what we are rooted in. Our foundation at the church in Christ is better than any label, association, talent, gift, or whatever else that a teacher or a coach is able to build upon. But we're able to give them a basis for life, for conflict resolution, for dealing with hard things. Yeah, they might have a tough experience at church. How many tough experiences daily are they having at school that they're not telling you about?
Right.
How many tough experiences are they having, when they will launch and go to college or go off to a job? They're going to face a lot of hard things. So yeah, facing hard things, especially at the church, where maybe the idea should be, well, you shouldn't face hard things at church, but the church is full of imperfect people, right? It's not a place where we have it all together. It's a hospital for people who are broken. You have the broken leading the broken, as Henry Nouwen says. And but the way that we are investing in those students and their students in particular, just as a good coach or teacher does, is really to help them in a holistic, well-rounded way to invest in them as a person and to grow them as a follower of Christ. But because of how we're aimed that way with Christ, they will see other effects of how their student responds to things, processes things. Part of that, as we just said, is honoring your parents, right? And so that is a huge plus, but it goes so much more than just the hour on Sunday morning. It's wherever they are, we can be a resource for them. We can help those parents wherever they are too. So it's a lot that we can do for them.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So before we get to the last question, I'd like to just take a minute and ask people if you're getting any value out of this video. We just ask you to like it. Give us a thumbs up. If you could subscribe to Shepherd at Home, just search Shepherd at Home on YouTube if you're checking out Jeff's, or search Youth Ministry Maverick. Give us a like, give us a subscribe, or even if you would share it, because there's all sorts of youth ministers out there who could probably benefit from this. There's also tons of families out there and parents out there who could benefit from this. So if you wouldn't mind giving us a like, subscribe, share, smash that bell if that's the sort of thing you're into, then so you won't ever miss a video that we've put out there. So Jeff, one last question.
Yeah, man. So talking about parents, talking about how we can convince them, how we can meet them where they're at with their needs or their skepticism. And we talked about earlier how we should be encouraging parents as the primary disciple makers of their students. But all of us know who work in youth ministry that we have students whose parents will never darken the door of a church. And they might not just be, well, I'm not sure about church because my kid has a hard time. They might be actively against the idea of church. And there are students who don't have one or both of their biological parents even in the picture. They're in jail. They left when they were 5. They bounced around the foster system. They're living with their grandparents or uncle who's kind of he's not really attached to their lives. How can we help those students in a different way, because we're not also able to circle back and engage with their parents? We just have them. And so they have other needs the students don't. How can youth workers help those students whose family situation is just tragic and hard?
Well, there's a bunch of ways, and that's really the heart of what we're doing here, is just helping kids through their struggles. One of the big things is when you have kids who are going through heavy stuff, maybe their parents aren't involved and all this sort of stuff, sometimes just being there for them, sometimes just being there, showing up to the ball game, just listening to their struggles, staying 10 minutes after church and just listening can be a huge a huge ministry to them. So sometimes just saying, I'm not scared of what you're going through. I'm not scared of what your situation is. I had a kid one time. I didn't really know him very well. He's sitting in the back of the youth room, and I walked up to the back. I walked up to him and I said, hey, buddy, tell me about your home situation. Tell me about what's going on at home. Where do you live? This sort of thing. I was just trying to get to know him. And he says, you don't want to hear. It's complicated. I says, just try me, And he's proceeded to tell me a situation that was very complicated, very complicated in how he is, where he lives, who he lives with, whether it's his stepmom and all that sort of stuff. And I was like, wow, that is complicated. And I just got to say, I'm so glad that you're here, that you're still engaging. I'm glad to be here with you. But the idea is that I didn't say, I wasn't scared of that complicated scenario that he's got. And so just kind of showing kids that you're not scared of what they're going through, I think goes a long way. Another thing is that I think we should, as youth workers, work very hard not to undermine the parents' authority and not to put them down. Because there's a lot of parents that are unengaged, but they're still their parents. Yep. So we still need to encourage them to honor your mother and father. Maybe share the gospel with your mother and father. Maybe pray for them, love them. You lead them in the ways that Jesus should be. Instead of saying, "Oh yeah, you got that. You must really have a crappy parent." Instead of like undermine. Oh, you know what? Probably shouldn't. That's probably not a good way to parent. Instead of undermining them, instead of kind of not supporting them, we need to be careful of that, to try and still support the parent, support them as the authority role that they have, and help them come together. And then the last thing I would say is when you have a kid whose parents are really unengaged, maybe they're not really involved in church, I think that just puts the weight of what we're doing on us to say, you may be the only Jesus that person ever sees. You may be the only influence that kid ever has. You may be the only one that ever encouraged that kid to go ahead and wear a tie to your graduation, because nobody's telling them to. You may be the one that gets to influence that kid in a positive way. And so a lot of times kids don't have anybody guiding them through those young years, helping them to understand how to navigate through life. And so lean in and don't be scared of the situation, but lean in, and I think that we can all be better for it.
Yeah. Love it, man. That sounds good. Thanks for arranging this. And as people watching can tell, I am Mr. Podcast audio only with my massive headphones, not great video quality, and Jeremy is all set up for video. But man, this is a lot of fun. I've had you on as a guest on my podcast before. Yep. Always glad to connect, bro. Love what you're doing. And I love this Shepherd at Home venture. And I know it's impacting families from the comments and everything I can see. And so I pray that God continues to use you in that.
Cool, man. Great chatting with you too. And God bless you, brother. Don't do anything too crazy. Go love on that little deacon baby you got there.
Yeah. Thanks, bro.
All right. Talk to you soon, man.
See ya.
Bye.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that interview with Jeremy. You will find the links to his website and YouTube channel in the show notes. It should also be in the description of this YouTube video. Well, thanks again for listening to Youth Ministry Maverick. This will be the final episode until the fall. After 60 episodes and doing a weekly episode nonstop since July, I am taking a much needed sabbatical from the podcast this summer. I have a jam-packed summer with my students here, doing lots of things after doing nothing last summer because of COVID-19. And I need some time to just kind of refresh, spend some good time with my family, and think about new content and a new list of guests for this coming fall when we pick back up with weekly episodes. I'm not exactly sure when we'll start back. It's probably going to be in late August or early September, but I will keep you posted on that. I'm still leaning more toward the audio outlet for all of my content, although This will hopefully be the first of several video episodes. I'm just not sure how many that there will be. You can find all of my episodes on our website, youthministrymaverick.com. You can also find a comprehensive list of our guests, their bios. You can find our online store where you can buy things to support me as I resource equipment and other things needed for the podcast. If you go and leave a review, not just a rating, but a review for us on Apple Podcasts, if you take a screenshot of that and send it to me before you hit submit, I will send you a personal thank you card as well as some merchandise that you cannot buy on our online store. So please go and do that. That will help us with visibility and overall impression, and I want to be able to send you that gift for supporting the podcast. That's all for now. Make sure to follow us on our social media channels on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. I'll be sending out some shout out posts to go back and check out some of our previous episodes over the summer. But stay tuned for later in the fall when I come back with weekly fresh content. Thanks again for watching and listening to Youth Ministry Maverick. Until next time, adios.